we're blue in the face, and but all this is going to come down to Congress and Senate, right? You're going to need parties, both sides of the aisle, to get all of this stuff passed, whether it be the child tax credit increase, whether it be the $25,000 for first time home buyers. Like, this stuff all needs to get passed. One side is saying, hey, listen, the whole 2025 Project 2025 only goes into effect if you have a Republican Senate, a Republican Congress, a presidency. You got the Supreme Court judges, but at the end of the day, this country always lands on some type of balance within government, whether you have one side the House, one side the Senate, and other. Is that what we're going to need here in order to really get some effective policies passed to address some of these issues? Because both candidates can talk to their blue in the face about the things they're going to do, but it needs to go through certain levels of government for it to get passed. Like, realistically, what should the American people, black people in general, be listening to from every politician? What should they want to hear? I mean, you got baby bond programs. You have a whole bunch of issues in states and things that are working, right, that can be implemented at the federal level. But these last few weeks of the election, right, what should people really be listening to? Maybe something that's not being discussed as much as you like to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you're right about the normal operation of government, but I'll just kind of gently push back on the Project 2025. So Project 2025 is an executive-centered program, right? And so that program is meant to create mischief that Donald Trump can do just through the stroke of his pen, right? And so the first thing that he wants to do is overturn the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Now, he's not going to do that by going to Congress and say, hey, pass a bill, overturning the Civil Rights Act. What he's going to do is he's going to write an executive order saying, I hereby prohibit the federal government and all government contractors from collecting EEO1 data, right? And that's going to mean that you can't say what your race is, right? And that's going to effectively defund the EEOC. And so that's just the same approach they took through the courts with the Voting Rights Act, right? So this is all a big preamble to say what Kamala Harris needs to be talking about in the next 20 days, as my message testing surveys have shown, is the danger of the Trump agenda returning us to a racialized dictatorship where your skin color determines your access to the ballot, your access to the labor market. That's the plan, people. And so they need to be saying that, because when you tell black people that, even black folks that don't remember, like you said, you remember, right? Maybe stories from your grandparents or your parents. The Gen Zs don't. And so, but when you tell them, they get it, right? Because they have this broad understanding of what the history of this country has been.
Yeah.
And so that's what she needs to do. Or she needs to get groups helping her do that. But you got to do it in a way that appeals to millennials and Gen Z. Rolling out some guy in their 60s, 70s, and 80s to talk about how bad Jim Crow was and what's wrong. That's not it. You've got to make, if people go to our ads, allianceforblack.equality.org, look at our ads, look at our YouTube channel, we target millennials and Gen Z with humor. We use people in their own age cohort to talk to them, right? That's a much more effective approach.
Is that working? Because everyone loves to laugh, right? We all love to laugh, and then specifically, again, this conversation started about black men. Is it working amongst your male people? I don't know if you see that demographic or not, or if you see that metric, but is it working amongst men, that humor to draw them in?
Yeah, it does. So we have both independent ad testers, and also we do our own tests at my firm level. And the ads work really well. They're very powerful. And we probably have the only scientifically tested black-centered content that's up and running right now. And we will be happy to partner with, anyone else that wants to take up these messages and help. We'd be happy to give our playbook to VP Harris. We've tried to give it to the Biden campaign earlier in the cycle, right? But earlier in the cycle, there are people in their ears saying, oh, don't worry about the black vote. We got that. Everybody in my church is going to vote for you, Joe and Kamala. Now we see the dilemma, and we're ready to go with content.
Yeah.
Right. We're
September.
not a money-making operation. We're a citizen operation. So if somebody wants to pirate our content, go for it, right? We just need to win.
Get you out of here. Two last things. The first is in September 2024, I was listening to a interview that you were a part of in Milwaukee, and part of the radio station there, and there was a brother that came on in that interview, and he said that he's emotionally not involved. On the one side, Democratic side, he sees the same old thing, some of the things we were talking about.
Yep.
And on the other side, he can't relate, as a lot of
Yeah.
people can't, right? And so for that black man that is feeling what that brother felt, emotionally not involved, emotionally just not there. When he turns on the television, he sees the rhetoric, he sees all the, and that they don't want anything to do with it. They don't want to watch because they know that nothing will change for them, right? There's a lot of people. I'm from North Philadelphia. There's a lot of people that feels like that. They don't want anything to do with this
absolutely.
election because they just don't feel like nothing will change. How
Yeah.
do you get that individual to change his mindset over these next, couple of weeks before election night?
Yeah, that's where fear of what's to come is got to be the mobilizer. And that's why our ads are not pro Kamala Harris as much as they are anti Donald Trump. And so, that's the only thing that's going to matter at this point. A lot of folks think that, black people have to just love every Democrat. Like, black men don't have to love Kamala Harris at all. But they do have to understand that, like, she's a much better alternative than what Mr. Trump is promising them in ways that matter to them every day, right? And so that's what we got to be doing. I'm a West Philly guy, and so like that is very, I see the same in my neighborhood, right? When I go home,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so that and you understand why. You understand why people feel that way, and they shouldn't be lectured, right? It's kind of like, well, what has this party really done to change the way things are around here?
Yeah.
It's not clear. It's not clear to them.
I'm going to take advantage of your professor days, right, and get you out on here because I always ask people the Jim Collins book, Good to Great, this great business book. And we're going to need to know the difference between good to great right away. What's the difference between a good president and a great one? U.S. president. Let me just say that. You might say a president of a company. What's the difference between a good U.S. president and a great one?
Well, I think that's decided by the people. But in my view, as an observer of the presidency, the truly great ones have done things for the country when they cut against their political interests, right? And so in the modern era, that's folks like, Lyndon Johnson, you could say, folks like Roosevelt, right, who, cut against his class, status to put in place the New Deal programs. Jimmy Carter trying to deal with inflation. Like we've had, even on the Republican side. I mean, you had people like George H.W. Bush, who was under tremendous pressure to end affirmative action programs in his term, and he wouldn't do it. He's like, racial inequality is a real thing, guys. Like, and he commissioned the federal glass ceiling report, right, to kind of defend the programs, right? So I think that those are the ones that really strike me as great, right? But yeah.
Yeah.